Correa stared at her reflection in the polished metal wall of Nexus 7's main corridor. Her iridescent scales caught the artificial light, creating tiny rainbows that danced across her fur-covered arms. She quickly looked away when a group of pure-blood Zentarians walked past, their whispers and pointed looks making her ears droop. Another day, another reminder that she didn't belong anywhere. The space station's artificial morning light was just beginning to brighten as Correa made her way to her tiny apartment in the station's lower levels. Her night shift at the maintenance bay had been particularly difficult. The supervisor had accidentally assigned her to clean the waste processing units again, even though it wasn't her turn. "Better suited for hybrid work," he had said with a sneer. As she walked, the station's massive view screen displayed the latest news. Galactic Dating Academy announces new matching algorithm. Correa's heart sank. She had already received 16 rejection letters from them. Yesterday's 17th rejection still sat unopened in her pocket, but she knew what it said. Genetic profile too complex for current matching systems. Thank you for your interest. The apartment door slid open with a tired hiss. Correa stepped inside her small home. A single room with a sleeping pod, a food preparation unit, and a small desk covered in research papers. The only luxury she allowed herself was a large window looking out into space. The stars were her only constant companions. She pulled out her personal tablet and checked her messages. 3 more rejected research proposals from the station's science division. Her latest work on cross-species medical treatments could help thousands, but no one would even look at it. The rejection notes always cited insufficient credentials or concerns about methodology. She knew the real reason. No one trusted research from a hybrid. Correa's mother was a Zentarian, a species known for their beautiful iridescent scales and analytical minds. Her father had been a Phylaxian, with their characteristic fur and enhanced senses. Their love had been scandalous enough, but having a child, that had been unforgivable. The Zentarians had disowned her mother. The Phylaxians had pretended her father never existed. Now, 30 cycles later, Correa lived in the gap between worlds, too scaled to be Phylaxian, too furry to be Zentarian. A soft chime from her tablet interrupted her thoughts. It was time for her weekly call with her mother. Correa's fingers hovered over the accept button, but she couldn't bring herself to press it. Not today. Not after another night of whispers and stares. Instead, she walked to her window and pressed her hand against the cold glass. Out there, somewhere, were others like her. There had to be. The station's database listed 17 known hybrid species combinations, but Correa had never met another one. They all seemed to disappear into the shadows of society, finding quiet corners where they could exist without drawing attention. She pulled out her research notes and began to work. If no one would accept her proposals, she would keep refining them until they couldn't be ignored. Her latest project studied how hybrid genetics could actually strengthen immune systems across species. The evidence was there in her own blood. She had never been sick a day in her life. The station's warning system suddenly blared to life, making her jump. Attention all residents. Incoming diplomatic vessel. Human delegation arriving in 30 minutes. All personnel maintain standard protocols. Correa had heard about humans, a new species that had recently achieved faster than light travel. They were supposed to be different. Some said dangerous, others said fascinating. She turned back to her work. It didn't matter. One more species that would probably find her just as strange as all the others did. Little did she know that incoming ship carried someone who would change everything. The human delegation's arrival turned Nexus 7 into chaos. Security teams rushed around. Dignitaries hurried to welcome ceremonies, and regular station life ground to a halt. In all the confusion, no one noticed Correa trying to slip through the crowded marketplace with her arms full of maintenance supplies. That was until she crashed directly into someone. Tools scattered across the floor as Correa stumbled. She caught herself against a wall, her fur standing on end from embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, I didn't." She froze. The person she'd bumped into wasn't Centurion or Phylaxian. He had no scales, no fur, just smooth skin and dark hair. A human. "Entirely my fault," he said, already kneeling to help gather her tools. His voice was different from any she'd heard before, warm and friendly. I was too busy staring at everything to watch where I was going. He looked up at her and smiled. "I'm Marcus. Marcus Chen." Greya stood still, shocked. Most people avoided touching anything she'd handled. But this human was picking up her things with his bare hands, seemingly unbothered by her hybrid nature. "I'm Greya," she managed to say. Instead of immediately leaving like most people did, Marcus kept talking. "Your genetic structure is fascinating. Centurion and Phylaxian, right? The way your scales blend with your fur pattern is remarkable." Greya's ears flattened against her head. "You can tell." "Cynoanthropologist," he explained, handing her the gathered tools. "I study different species and their cultures. I've never seen a hybrid quite like you before." Before Greya could respond, a group of station officials rushed over. "Dr. Chen," one of them called out, "you shouldn't be wandering alone." And their voice turned cold, associating with maintenance staff. Marcus frowned slightly. "I was just having a fascinating conversation about genetic diversity with Dr. Greya." The officials looked confused. Greya wanted to disappear. She wasn't a doctor. They'd never let a hybrid earn such a title. But before she could correct him, Marcus continued. "Those research papers on hybrid genetics I saw in the station's database, they were yours, weren't they? Brilliant work, even if they weren't officially accepted." Greya's tail twitched nervously. You read my research. Every word." His eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Your theories about hybrid immune systems could revolutionize interspecies medicine. I'd love to discuss them further." The officials shifted uncomfortably. "Dr. Chen, the welcome ceremony can wait 10 minutes, Marcus said firmly. He turned back to Greya. "Would you mind showing me around the station sometime? From a cultural perspective, I mean. Your unique viewpoint would be invaluable to my research." Greya's heart raced. No one had ever wanted her perspective before. I'm just maintenance staff," she admitted quietly. Marcus's smile didn't fade. "And I'm just a curious human who'd love to learn more about this station from someone who sees it differently than most." He pulled out a small device and tapped it against hers, transferring his contact information. "Message me if you're interested." As he was led away by the increasingly agitated officials, he called back, "And Greya, don't let anyone tell you your differences are flaws. Sometimes they're your greatest strengths." Greya stood in the marketplace long after he'd gone, holding her tools close. Her communicator felt warm where his contact information waited. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen more than just a hybrid. They'd seen a person worth knowing. She smiled, her scales catching the light in a rainbow shimmer. Maybe humans really were different after all. Or maybe just this one was. Marcus Chen walked quickly through the station's diplomatic quarter, ignoring the disapproving looks from his fellow human delegates. He knew he was breaking protocol by spending so much time with Greya, but he couldn't help himself. There was something special about her that went beyond his professional curiosity as a xenoanthropologist. He found her in her usual spot in the station's public research library, surrounded by data pads and holographic displays. Her unique features, the way her scales shimmered through her fur, caught the light in a way that made it hard for him to look away. "Working on another proposal?" he asked, setting down 2 cups of Earth-style coffee he'd brought. He discovered she loved the smell, even though she couldn't drink it. Greya's ears perked up at his voice, but then quickly flattened. "The Science Council rejected my last 3. They said my methodology was questionable." She made air quotes with her clawed fingers, something she'd learned from Marcus. "Show me," Marcus said, pulling up a chair. As Greya explained her research into hybrid genetics and immune system enhancement, he found himself amazed again by her brilliance. The way she connected different species' biological systems was revolutionary. They're wrong, he said firmly. This could save lives across multiple species. It's not your methodology they're questioning. It's you. Krea's shoulders slumped. Maybe they're right. Maybe a hybrid shouldn't. Stop, Marcus interrupted. He reached out, hesitated, then gently placed his hand over hers. It was the first time they'd touched since their accidental meeting in the marketplace. Her fur was soft, her scales smooth and warm. Being a hybrid doesn't make you less. It makes you unique. Special. The library's quiet was broken by angry whispers. A group of Zentarian scientists had entered and were pointing at them, their disapproval clear in their rigid postures. Marcus felt Krea try to pull away, but he held firm. Let them look, he said quietly. Humans have a saying, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. A small smile touched Krea's lips. Your species has strange sayings. We have lots of them. Want to hear more over dinner? The diplomatic corps got some new Earth foods in yesterday. I could show you what real pasta tastes like. Before Krea could answer, Marcus's communication device buzzed. It was Ambassador Chen, his mother. The message was brief but clear. Meeting. Now. Marcus sighed. I have to go, but think about dinner. Krea nodded, then watched him leave. As soon as he was gone, she heard the Zentarian scientists approaching her table. You should be ashamed, one of them hissed. Corrupting a diplomatic visitor with your hybrid ways. Krea stood up straight, remembering Marcus's words about being unique and special. The only corruption here is your prejudice, she replied, gathering her datapads. As she walked away, she realized something had changed. For the first time in her life, someone saw her differences as advantages, not flaws. In the diplomatic quarter, Marcus faced his mother's stern disapproval. You're causing a diplomatic incident, Ambassador Chen said. The Zentarians are threatening to withdraw from trade negotiations unless you stop seeing the hybrid. Her name is Krea, Marcus replied firmly. And she's the most brilliant scientist I've met on this station. Their prejudice is making them miss out on groundbreaking research. This isn't about science, Marcus. It's about politics. Your behavior reflects on all of humanity. Marcus stood up. Good. Then let it reflect that humans judge people by their character, not their species or genetics. Isn't that why we're here? To show the galaxy what humanity stands for. He left his mother's office, his decision made. Protocol or not. He wasn't going to let Krea face this alone anymore. He typed a quick message. Dinner tonight. My quarters. 1900 hours. I'll show you why Earth's spaghetti is better than anything in the galaxy. For the first time since arriving on Nexus 7, both Krea and Marcus felt like they had found somewhere they belonged. With each other. The news spread through Nexus 7 like a solar flare. A human diplomat was dating a hybrid. Krea tried to ignore the whispers as she walked through the station's crowded marketplace, but today they were louder than usual. She stopped at her favorite food stall, run by an elderly Phylaxian who usually treated her kindly. But today, he wouldn't meet her eyes. We're closed, he mumbled, even though his stall was full of fresh food. But I always get my breakfast here, Krea said softly. Not anymore. The Pure Blood Association is watching. They'll shut me down if I serve your kind. Krea's ears drooped, but before she could leave, a familiar voice spoke behind her. Then I'll buy it. After all, I'm a diplomat. They can't refuse service to me, right? Marcus stood there, still in his formal Earth uniform. He hadn't slept. He'd been in emergency meetings all night about their relationship, but he smiled at her like none of that mattered. The Phylaxian vendor hesitated, then quickly packed their usual order. As they walked away, Krea noticed more stares than ever. You shouldn't be seen with me, she whispered. Your career. My career isn't worth hiding who I care about, Marcus replied. He took her hand publicly, something that made several passing Zentarians gasp in shock. They reached Krea's research lab, but the door wouldn't open. Her access code had been denied. On the screen was a message, pending review of inappropriate conduct. Marcus frowned. They can't do that. Your research is too important. They can, and they did. Korea's voice shook. My mother's family finally sent me a message too. They say if I don't end things with you and agree to genetic modification, they'll officially declare me dead in their family records. Genetic modification. Marcus looked horrified. They want you to change who you are. The Zentarian elders say they can fix my hybrid features, make me look more normal. She touched her scaled and furry arm. My father's people are demanding the opposite. They want me to remove the scales completely. Marcus pulled out his tablet and showed her the messages he'd received. The human diplomatic corps had threatened to send him back to Earth. There were concerns about maintaining species purity and diplomatic stability. Humans used to think like this too, he said quietly. We had wars over skin color, religion, who people loved. It took us centuries to learn better. He squeezed her hand. We're not going back to that kind of thinking just because we're in space now. They walked to the station's observation deck, their favorite quiet spot. Through the massive windows, they could see ships coming and going, stars twinkling in the distance. My research could help everyone, Greya said, pressing her hand against the cold glass. Hybrid genetics could revolutionize medicine, but they won't even look at it now. Then we'll make them look, Marcus said firmly. I've been talking to some independent scientists on Earth. They're interested in your work. Suddenly, the observation deck's doors slid open. A group of station security officers entered, led by a stern-looking Zentarian official. Dr. Correa, the official said coldly, your presence is causing unrest among our citizens. We're relocating you to the lower levels for everyone's safety. You mean hiding her? Marcus stepped forward. Like you hide all your problems. Human diplomat. The official's voice dripped with disdain. This is not your concern. Everything about this is my concern. Marcus stood his ground. You can't just. The security officers moved forward, but Correa grabbed Marcus's arm. Not here, she whispered. Not now. We need a different way. As they were escorted out, Marcus and Correa shared a look. They both knew things would get worse before they got better. But for the first time in her life, Correa wasn't facing the prejudice alone. And that made all the difference. The lower levels of Nexus 7 weren't as bad as Correa had feared. Her new lab was smaller and darker, but at least she had one. And the best part, no one watched her here. No one cared what a hybrid did in the forgotten corners of the station. Marcus visited whenever he could sneak away from his diplomatic duties. Today, he found her surrounded by holographic displays of DNA strands, her eyes bright with excitement. I found something, she said before he could even say hello. Her fur was ruffled from running her claws through it, something she did when she was excited. Look at this. Marcus stepped closer, watching as she pulled up 2 DNA sequences. What am I looking at? This, she pointed to the first strand, is normal Zentarian DNA. And this, she highlighted the second, is mine. See these patterns? My hybrid genetics didn't just combine 2 species, they created something new. She typed rapidly on her console, bringing up medical data. I've been studying blood samples from other hybrids who agreed to help. We all have something in common: enhanced healing, stronger immune systems, and better adaptation to different environments. Marcus leaned closer, fascinated. Your genetic flaws are actually advantages. More than that, Correa's tail swished with excitement. I think we could use hybrid genetics to create new medical treatments. Imagine vaccines that adapt to different species, or treatments that could help pure blood survive in different environments. She pulled up another display showing successful test results. I've already proven it works in basic cell cultures, but I need more labs, more equipment. Her excitement faded. Things I'll never get down here. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his tablet. Maybe not on Nexus 7, but He showed her a message from Earth's Scientific Academy. "They're interested in your research. Really interested." Greya's ears perked up, then drooped. "The station won't let me leave. I've been officially restricted to the lower levels." "Actually," Marcus grinned, "they can't stop you. I checked the regulations. They can restrict your movement on the station, but they can't prevent you from leaving entirely. That would violate about 6 different interstellar laws." Before Correa could respond, her computer chimed. New test results were ready. As they watched, the numbers confirmed her theory. Hybrid cells could adapt and heal in ways pure species couldn't. "This could change everything," she whispered. "No more genetic discrimination. No more species being limited to their home environments. No more children being told they're wrong just because their parents were different species." Marcus watched her work, amazed by her determination. Despite everything, the discrimination, the isolation, the threats, she hadn't given up. She turned her pain into something that could help others. "We should publish these results," he said. "Not through the station's scientific board. They'll just bury it. We'll send it directly to every major research institution in the galaxy." Greya looked uncertain. "They'll try to discredit it. Say it's just hybrid propaganda. Then we'll prove them wrong. Numbers don't lie, Correa. And these numbers," he gestured to her results, "they tell a story that needs to be heard." They worked through the night, preparing the research for publication. Correa wrote about the science, while Marcus helped frame it in terms other species would understand. As morning approached, they sent the paper to hundreds of research institutions across the galaxy. "What happens now?" Correa asked, suddenly nervous. Marcus took her hand, feeling the unique texture of fur and scales that made her who she was. "Now, we wait, and we keep working, because you've just started a scientific revolution, whether they're ready for it or not." Correa looked at their joined hands, human skin against hybrid fur and scales. Maybe this was what real science was about, not just discovering new things, but bringing different worlds together. For the first time in her life, she felt proud to be exactly who she was. Correa stood frozen in the doorway of her lower-level lab. Everything was destroyed. Her computers were smashed, test samples scattered across the floor, and her research notes torn to pieces. On the wall, someone had sprayed in glowing paint. "Keep his species pure." Her hand shook as she picked up a broken data crystal. 3 months of work, gone. But worse than the destruction was the message scrawled across her main screen. "Leave the human, or next time it won't just be your lab." Security arrived an hour later, but they barely looked around. "Probably just a technical malfunction," the Zentarian officer said, not meeting her eyes. "A malfunction didn't write threats on my wall," Correa said quietly. The officer shrugged. "No evidence of forced entry. Nothing we can do." After they left, Correa sank to the floor, surrounded by the ruins of her work. That's where Marcus found her. "I came as soon as I heard," he said, kneeling beside her. His face hardened when he saw the threats. "This has gone too far." Correa's voice was hollow. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I should just—" "No." Marcus helped her up. "I have an idea. But it's risky, and I'll probably lose my diplomatic position." "Marcus, you can't. Watch me." 2 hours later, Marcus stood in the station's main communication center. With Correa's help, he had bypassed the normal broadcasting restrictions. His face appeared on every screen in Nexus 7. "My name is Dr. Marcus Chen, Earth Diplomatic Corps," he began, "and I'm here to talk about something this station tries to hide: systematic discrimination against hybrids." In her ruined lab, Correa watched on a salvaged screen, her heart pounding. Today, brilliant research was destroyed not because it was wrong, but because the scientist was a hybrid. Marcus held up copies of Correa's findings. This research could save lives across species, but instead of celebrating this discovery, someone tried to silence it with violence. He looked directly into the camera. "On Earth, we once made the same mistakes. We judged people by their appearance. their heritage, their differences. We learned the hard way that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. The station's security tried to cut the broadcast, but Correa's technical skills kept them out. Marcus continued, "To those who destroyed Dr. Correa's lab, you didn't just attack her research. You attacked hope. Hope for medical breakthroughs that could help everyone. Hope for a future where no one is judged by their genetics." The station's corridors filled with people watching. Some angry, some thoughtful, some ashamed. And to every hybrid hiding in the shadows of this station, you deserve better. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. Your differences aren't flaws. They're the future. Suddenly, Correa's screen showed something unexpected. Messages were pouring in from across the galaxy. Other hybrids, watching the broadcast, sharing their stories. Scientists offering lab space, equipment, support. Marcus's voice grew stronger. "I've sent copies of Dr. Correa's research to every major scientific institution in known space. You can destroy one lab, but you can't destroy an idea. And her idea is simple, that diversity, in all its forms, makes us stronger." The security finally broke through, cutting the broadcast. But it was too late. The message had spread. Correa's communicator buzzed with message after message. Other hybrids on the station, reaching out. Scientists offering to collaborate. And most surprisingly, a message from the Earth Science Academy. Full research funding approved. Lab space available immediately. When Marcus found her again, she was crying. But for the first time in her life, they were tears of joy. "I'm probably going to be fired," he said, smiling despite everything. Correa touched his face gently. "Worth it. To stand up for what's right. To stand up for you." He took her hand. Always. Outside the lab, they could hear people talking, arguing, questioning old beliefs. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but it had begun. And it had started with one human who saw past appearances to the person beneath. The Earth Science Academy's message glowed on Correa's screen. Immediate position available. Full funding. Private lab. Security guaranteed. It was everything she'd ever dreamed of. Yet she couldn't press accept. Marcus sat beside her in his temporary quarters. After his broadcast, the diplomatic corps had stripped him of his official residence. Now he lived in the civilian section, his belongings packed in boxes. "You should take it," he said softly. "Earth is different. No one will care that you're a hybrid." Correa's tail twitched nervously. "But what about you? Your career?" "Already over," he laughed, but there was sadness in his eyes. "Mother made it official this morning. I'm no longer part of the diplomatic corps." The news hit Correa hard. "Because of me. Because you stood up for me." "No," Marcus turned to face her, "because I stood up for what was right." "There's a difference." A chime from his tablet interrupted them. Marcus read the message, his eyes widening. "Well, this is interesting." "What is it?" "Job offer. From the Interstellar Science Institute. They want me to head their new xenocultural research department." He showed her the message. "Apparently, my recent actions demonstrate exactly the kind of perspective they need." Correa's ears perked up, then drooped again. "That's on New Mars. Earth Academy's offer is for their main campus in Australia." She touched his hand. "We'd be on different planets." Before Marcus could respond, another message arrived. This one made Correa gasp. "What?" Marcus leaned over to look. It's from other hybrids on the station. Dozens of them." Her voice shook as she read. "They're asking me to stay, to help them fight for change here. They say my research could force the station to change its policies." She pulled up more messages. Scientists from the station's labs. Ones who had previously rejected her work now wanted to collaborate. Even some pure-blood Zentarians and Phalaxians were reaching out, questioning their old prejudices. "If I leave," she said slowly, "I'll have everything I wanted. Safety, respect, a real lab." She looked around the station that had been her home, despite everything. "But if I stay, you could change things here," Marcus finished. Make it better for others like you. Greya stood and walked to the window, watching the stars. When I was young, I used to hide in the maintenance tunnels, crying because I didn't belong anywhere. I promised myself that if I ever found somewhere I did belong, I'd never leave. She turned to Marcus, her scales catching the starlight. But maybe belonging isn't about finding a perfect place. Maybe it's about making the place you are better. Marcus joined her at the window. The Institute's offer. I could turn it down. Stay here. Help you. Greya touched his face gently. No. You've already given up too much for me. Take the position. New Mars isn't that far. And she smiled. They do have faster ships these days. Long-distance relationships aren't easy. Neither is changing centuries of prejudice, she replied. But I think it's worth trying. Both things. Marcus pulled her close, feeling the now familiar texture of fur and scales against his skin. You're amazing, you know that. They tried to make you hide, tried to make you change, tried to drive you away. Instead, you're staying to fight. I learned from this strange human, she teased. He taught me that being different isn't a weakness, it's a strength. Their quiet moment was interrupted by more messages. The station was buzzing with debate about hybrid rights. Some supported change, others resisted. But at least people were talking. It won't be easy, Marcus warned. Greya looked at the stars, then at the station she had decided to change. The best things never are. In her heart, she knew this was right. She had found something better than belonging. She had found purpose. 1 year had passed since Greya decided to stay on Nexus 7. The station looked different now, or maybe she saw it differently. Her new lab in the main science sector buzzed with activity as researchers from various species worked together, studying hybrid genetics. Dr. Greya, a young Zentarian-Quillian hybrid, called out, her scales and quills shimmering. The latest test results are ready. Greya smiled, remembering when she had been the only hybrid brave enough to work in the open. Now her lab employed 5 hybrid researchers, with more applying every month. Her computer chimed. A call from New Mars. Her heart lifted as Marcus's face appeared on the screen. Hey beautiful, he grinned. Ready for the big announcement? Almost. She adjusted her camera to show him the lab. Your mother's here, by the way. Former Ambassador Chen, now the head of the Interspecies Relations Board, stood examining research data with a Phylaxian scientist. After losing her diplomatic position for supporting her son's radical ideas, she had found a new calling in promoting hybrid rights. The board votes in an hour, Marcus said. If they approve your medical protocols, every hospital in the galaxy will have access to hybrid-based treatments. Greya finished. Her tail swished with excitement. How are the cultural sensitivity classes going? Graduating another group today. You should see how many pure-blood species now want to learn about hybrid cultures. His face softened. I miss you. 3 more days, she reminded him. Their monthly visits were never enough. But they made them work, just in time for the ceremony. The ceremony. Greya still couldn't believe it. The station was hosting the first ever hybrid heritage celebration, and she had been asked to give the opening speech. After ending the call, Greya walked to her old lab in the lower levels. She kept it as a reminder, though the threatening graffiti had been painted over with a beautiful mural showing different species together. Quite a change, isn't it? A voice said behind her. She turned to see the old Phylaxian food vendor who had once refused to serve her. Now he brought free meals to her lab every week, his way of apologizing. The station's monthly report shows hybrid immigration up 200%, he continued. They're calling Nexus 7 a model of integration. Greya touched the mural. There's still resistance. Of course, change takes time. But look around. Mixed couples walking openly, hybrid children in regular schools, even pure-blood parents proudly announcing hybrid pregnancies. Later that day, Greya stood before the station's council. Once, they had tried to hide her away. Now they listened as she presented her latest research. The vote from the Interspecies Relations Board came in. Unanimous approval for hybrid-based medical treatments. Korea's research would help millions across the galaxy. That evening, she found a quiet moment in the observation deck, watching ships come and go. A small box sat in her pocket, her gift for Marcus when he arrived. Inside was a data crystal containing her acceptance of the joint position they'd been offered, co-directors of the new Hybrid Research Institute, to be built halfway between Earth and New Mars. They would finally be together, doing the work they loved. Her reflection in the window caught her eye. The same scales and fur that had once made her feel like an outcast now filled her with pride. She was Korea, hybrid scientist, rights advocate, and proof that love could cross any boundary. Her communicator buzzed with a message from Marcus. Breaking news. Earth just announced official recognition of hybrid marriages. I think we inspired some changes back here too. See you in 3 days, my love. Korea smiled at the stars. Once, she had thought no one would ever want her. Now she knew better. It hadn't taken all of humanity to make her feel desired. Just one human who saw her true worth. And together, they had helped others see it too. The station's lights dimmed into night cycle, but the stars kept shining. Like hope, like change, like love. Some lights never go out. They just get brighter.